I let out a small sigh of relief as I sat down in the living room of my apartment, Madoka-chan fast asleep in her room, Rashi was out on a mission currently and the boys were still in Wave, overseeing the construction of the bridge to ensure there was no further danger. But, the biggest danger seemed to have passed, allowing me a moment to relax. It is good to relax when you can. I froze, my mind seizing momentarily as the blue box floated in front of my vision. It certainly has been a while since we spoke, Yuriko Uchiha. So, you're still watching me then? I thought you would have gotten bored by now, I breathed out, forcing my body to relax as I eyed the box in front of me warily. Given how little I use the power you granted to me. Quite the opposite really. It fascinates me to no end at how little you use the power of the gamer. No, that is not the right wording. Rather, you use it as a guide for how your growth is working. I have yet to see a human like you not get swept away by their own potential and rush headlong into your growth. Not to mention the fact that you are not focused on solely your own strength, but rather, increasing the strength of your charges, while trying to do everything you can to decrease the strength of your enemies. Quite admirable really. I snorted a bit in response as I leaned back into the couch a bit more. Really? I didn't know any more to be honest, the words left my lips easily as I spoke, if there was one person I was never going to lie to, it was myself. But, it's getting harder to remember the things that happened in the manga, and the things that happened in your previous life. I knew my silence was all the confirmation I needed. I remembered that I had been a male, but, my appearance, my build, my hobbies. My family. It is not surprising, to be honest. Life in your previous incarnation had its trials, but when compared to the trials you face as a kunoichi that came into her own during a time of war, they are rather paltry in comparison, aren't they? Yeah. I admitted softly, closing my eyes for a bit. I can only remember fragments, and I know my life then was far from easy for me then, or rather, for him. Yes, for him. The one thing you humans never realize with reincarnation, while the soul may start off the same. By the time even 4 years have passed, it is noticeably different because of everything you experienced since then, I finished with a heavy sigh. And I have been alive for over 2 decades now. I have a husband when I never dated before and a daughter as well. Congratulations for that, by the way. I snorted a bit, even after all this time, it was still a smartass. Can I ask a couple of things? I questioned hopefully. I cannot promise answers, but go ahead. First, why me? I asked speculatively. Out of anyone, why did you choose me for all of this? There a pause for a moment before a response came. There was no real reason. You caught my attention and I decided to see what you could do. I snorted again. What else was I expecting from, whatever you are, I said in bemusement. Oh. Not assuming that I am of the divine. I narrowed my eyes a bit at its amused response. No. I don't think you are. I think, you are something, different from them, I answered finally. You are maybe not as powerful as them in this realm I guess. But you are, less limited I would say. An accurate theory. Indeed, even before you came here, your intelligence is striking. But now, you don't have that useless clutter filling your mind unlike before. I frowned a bit in response, a brief flash of a memory from my previous life, of my mother telling me about my potential. Yeah. I murmured. I guess, there was only one other thing I wanted to ask you. Yes? What's your name? I could feel the surprise from whatever was on the other side of this power as they paused in their reaction. Yes, you are definitely most interesting, Yuriko Uchiha. My name is Nei-chan. I smiled as I heard Naruto's energetic cry from where I was sitting near Sarutobi-sama in his office. Hello, Naruto-kun, remember your professionalism, I reminded him gently, getting him to stop his charge to hug me as he chuckled weakly in embarrassment. Right, sorry, Nei-chan, Hokage-jiji, Naruto apologized, getting chuckles from the two of us as he rejoined the rest of his team for their report. Just like in the original timeline, Sarutobi-sama actually enjoyed Naruto-kun's irrelevant attitude and it was refreshing for him to find someone who did not Hokage-sama him left and right. Still, professional standards had to be kept. Very well then. Kakashi-kun, your report please. Sarutobi-sama requested, meeting the gaze of the silver-haired jonin. Yes, Hokage-sama, Kakashi replied, bowing slightly. We departed Konoha at 0700 as planned to make our way to the country of Wave. It was around 1300 that we first made contact with enemy shinobi, tentatively identified as missing ninja from Amigakure by their headbands. After a brief battle with them where my students eliminated the threat and defended our client, we pressed the client for more details about the mission as he said there was only the possibility of bandits attacking him. He admitted to his deceit and informed us of status of Wave being taken over by Gato Shipping Industries and their desperation to complete the bridge. At this point, as the captain of Squad 7, I decided that his deceit was not out of maliciousness, but of desperation. As such, I decided the mission will continue on. It was at this point that I requested reinforcements from you, Hokage-sama, as I felt the situation called for more experienced hands than what we had available. He took a small breath before continuing. It was at this point you got us in contact with Zabuza Momochi of Kirigakure and his partner Haku, also of Kirigakure. It was decided then that Zabuza and his partner would be keeping a low profile while we drew the attention of the remaining missing Nin. Once we confirmed who exactly the target was from Zabuza's scouting, we came up with a preliminary plan of myself, Naruto and Sasuke engaging them on the bridge when they attempted to assassinate Tazuna, with Sakura and Haku protecting his family and Zabuza eliminating Gato and his subordinates to ensure the threat ended there. Our skirmish was relatively brief against Raiga Kurisuke and his subordinates, with both Naruto and Sasuke performing admirably against higher-ranked opponents, eliminating them quickly and efficiently while I dealt with Raiga. While the attack was happening at the bridge, a few of Gato's subordinates attacked Tazuna's home with the intention of taking his family hostage, only to get waylaid by the prepared traps along with Sakura and Haku's efforts. Once the threat had been eliminated, we continued to protect Tazuna and his workers while they finished construction of the bridge, with no other notable events occurring. Sarutobi-sama hummed as he nodded his acceptance of the report. "Thank you, Kakashi-kun," he replied calmly. "And of the mission payment?" While the mission was more dangerous than initially expected and reported by the client, we were able to secure the necessary means of payment from both Gato's vault and a favorable trade agreement from the nation of Wave itself, Kakashi informed as he placed a scroll on the desk. In addition to this, Konoha Ninja will not be required to pay the toll to use the bridge to Wave. "Very good," Sarutobi-sama replied as he moved the scroll to the side. "Good work from all of you," he continued, addressing the genin in the room. "Not only have you performed admirably as expected of a Konoha shinobi, but you remained adaptable to a situation that will benefit Konoha in the long run." The three genin preened a bit at the praise from the leader of the village as he gave them an approving smile. As a result of the added danger of enemy shinobi of at least Chunin in ranking, it is decided that this mission will be bumped up to a low A ranking instead of its initial mid-C ranking, Sarutobi-sama informed them, causing them to straighten a bit in response. "Your records have been updated with this information and your pay for this mission will be suitably increased as a result." "Thank you, Hokage-sama," Kakashi replied, with the genin quickly echoing their sensei with varying enthusiasm. "You are all now dismissed," Sarutobi-sama informed, giving Naruto-kun all he needed to let out a small whoop of joy before tackling me with a tight hug. Laughing a bit, I hugged my little brother in return, gesturing for the slightly reluctant Sasuke to join us. "Good work you too," I said approvingly, ruffling their hair in approval. "We'll be celebrating tonight, alright?" "Yes." Naruto-kun cheered happily in response as he vibrated in excitement. Sasuke-kun was more reserved than his brother, but the eagerness was clear to see in his eyes. "Of course, you two are free to join us as well," I informed, looking up to Sakura-chan and Kakashi. "Ah, thank you, Yuriko-sensei, but I'm going to be spending some time with my family tonight," Sakura-chan informed with an apologetic smile. "They'll want to hear about my first C-rank mission, although I think my mother won't be happy that it was an underrated mission." "Of course," I replied with an understanding smile. "If Mabuki-san has questions about the mission you are uncertain of, or do not wish to answer, direct her to talk to either Kakashi-san or myself." Sakura nodded with a bright smile at my assurance. "I'm afraid I'll have to decline as well," Kakashi informed me apologetically. "I have a few matters that I need to see to tonight." "Very well then," I said with a nod of understanding, and I did. The two of us could work together, but after everything that happened, the two of us getting along didn't seem all that possible. I turned my attention back to my brothers. "Well? Shall we go home and get started on making dinner?" "Ramen!" Naruto shouted eagerly. Sasuke rolled his eyes in response. "Come on, Naruto, we have ramen all the time," he sighed. "Let's have something different for once." I chuckled as the two began to argue, bowing slightly to Sarutobi-sama before leaving the office. A lot has changed, but some things never do apparently. "Yuriko-san," a voice caught my attention as I strolled through the streets of Konoha with Madoka-chan in my arms and my mother at my side, shopping for some new clothing for Madoka-chan. Looking over, I blinked at the sight of a raccoon mask Anbu standing there respectively. "Hokage-sama wishes for your urgent attendance in his office," the Anbu informed me respectfully before vanishing. Damn it, I muttered quietly to myself before looking to my mother, who gave me an understanding smile as she took Madoka-chan from me. Thanks, Mom, I whispered gratefully before vanishing off in a blur. I was in my civilian clothing, a simple shirt with a pair of pants and shoes, but I carried a set of active duty clothes in a scroll in a pocket, so I was able to change and be at Sarutobi-sama's office in less than a handful of minutes. Something that happened within a minute and a half, a new personal record actually. Yuriko-chan, thank you for coming so promptly, Sarutobi-sama said with a grateful look on his face. I have some troubling news, you remember the Akatsuki? I blinked. I do, they're after the bijou and their containers, I replied instantly. Wasn't this too early for them to start moving? One of their members, Kakuzu, was spotted operating in the area where Squad 7's mission is taking place, he told me, making my blood freeze as my eyes widened. My brothers and Sakura-chan were strong for genin, yes, and with Kakashi there was little that could be a threat to them, but the Akatsuki? That was a different beast altogether. I'm going, I announced firmly, as my blood began to heat up, my gaze meeting Sarutobi-sama's challengingly. He was my leader, yes, my respect for him knew only a single boundary, the safety of my family. And he knew this. Go. I was out of the window and passed through the gate in seconds, my Inaba flicker, active as I surged through the trees that surrounded Konoha. Nothing was going to stop me from protecting my family. Since childhood, Naruto had been exposed to powerful people almost constantly, his sister, Sarutobi Hiruzen, Rashi, Kakashi, Guy. So much so that he had a better grasp on how strong people could be than most fresh genin. But this? What they were encountering now? This was almost impossible for him to grasp. Is that all? The masked man before them questioned, inky black tendrils leaking from his stitched-together body. His arms were gray from using a jutsu he had called the Earth Spear, and he had opened the fight with a fire jutsu called Searing Migraine. Even Kakashi-sensei was being thrown around like a fresh genin, even with his Sharingan exposed. Humph. I was expecting better from the hero of the Sharingan. The brats were so-so. What-ish? Sakura whispered in disbelief. Kakuzu, the undying bounty hunter, the silver-haired jonin, answered with some pain in his voice. He had just been punched by a fist that was as tough as diamonds and had more than one broken rib. They say he has lived for over a century, hunting only the most powerful people in the bingo book and other bounty sources. People have seen him dead before, but he comes back every time. Ha! Your sources are somewhat good. Kakazu grunted. Money is what concerns me, as only money will never betray you. Now then, Kakashi will make an excellent cash cow, while the Sharingan will sell well in Kyomogakure. The other brat and the girl are only useful to lure out another, more profitable bounty head. Nei-san. Naruto forced himself to speak. You're after my Nei-san. Humph, not a complete idiot either, Kakazu grunted in amusement, leering at Naruto. Yeah, not only is her head worth millions, but her eyes are worth even more on top of that. Naruto growled a bit as he gritted his teeth, desperately trying to restrain himself from attacking the vastly superior opponent. Damn it. He growled out, feeling completely helpless at the moment. Now, just sit there and be good, and maybe you will actually survive T-dash. Kushizashi, extend, a familiar voice cried out right before the undying shinobi was slammed into by the point of a sword that kept growing longer as he was pushed back. Kushizashi, shrink, Yuriko commanded as she appeared in the midst of the group, her kodachi shrinking back to its normal size as she faced off against Kakuzu. If you had wanted to come after my head, all you had to do was send a letter, I do respond to them after all. Nei-san. Naruto breathed out in surprise as he looked at the back of his sister as she stood protectively in front of them. The bloody scalpel of Konoha, Kakuzu growled as he recovered from the surprise blow of her extending sword, the Earth Spear, taking the worst of it for him. You got here faster than I expected. Yuriko ignored him for a second before turning her head slightly to look at them, Naruto freezing a bit as he saw her eyes. Rather than her warm onyx black eyes that he was so used to, or even her crimson red Sharingan, her eyes were cold, and with a strange pattern of a red shuriken over top of a black five-petaled flower. This, he realized, was not his sister. This wasn't the kind woman who had raised him. Nor was it the stern and demanding woman who had trained him and scolded him. In the place of that was a shinobi. This was Yuriko Uchiha, war veteran, the sword scalpel, in full readiness to kill. Kakashi, get them out of here, Yuriko commanded in an icy-cold calm voice. I cannot kill him while protecting you all at the same time. Kakashi shifted slightly, looking irritated, but relaxed after a moment. Ah, you got it, he replied after a moment. I will give you the opening you need, Yuriko assured as she began to walk forward. Be ready. Oh. Kakuzu replied with an amused chuckle. Do you think it would be that EAS dash? He was cut off as Yuriko vanished. In front of all of them, all of whom were at a hair trigger waiting to react to something. The dead have no right to speak, Yuriko stated as she appeared behind him, her hand and sword glowing with sharp blue chakra as she lashed out at him, Kakuzu only barely managing to dodge her attack that Naruto couldn't even track. Now! Come! Kakashi barked out to his students, shaking them out of their stupor as they began to move away. I won't let you get away that easy. Kakuzu shouted as a masked mass of black tendrils separated from him and moved to intercept them, the mouth of the mask glowing as fire began to gather in it. Enough, her words were a proclamation as Yuriko appeared in front of the mass of tendrils and stabbed her sword through the face of it before a pulse of chakra caused the entire thing to fall apart. I told you, Kakuzu, the dead have no right to speak. Kakuzu gritted his teeth in frustration as one of his hearts was destroyed within seconds of Yuriko's arrival on the field while his leverage continued to escape. You brat, he growled out angrily. You think it's that easy to kill me? I survived against the Shodai Hokage. I couldn't help but snort at his proclamation, one he had made 3 years from now against Kakashi, Shikamaru, Ino, and Choji in the original timeline. It sounded like a great achievement, but really. That is not as powerful of a claim as you make it out to be, I announced in a cold tone, although amusement filtered in, I couldn't help the patronizing smile that came onto my face as I looked at Kakuzu who seemed so small before me. The Shodai was a great man, a genius like no other and truly worthy of the title of God of Shinobi, but he was also very compassionate. You think you are the only one to survive battle with him? Hardly, he had a habit of allowing his enemies to escape in the hopes that they would change their ways. I chuckled a bit, as I shook my head. Now, if you had said Madara, then I would take you as a serious threat, I informed him with a smile. He was not so compassionate to his enemies. But with that, you are just like a child, trying to sound strong. Kakuzu's eyes widened as I pressed my chakra down upon him. I had no doubt that Kakuzu was a strong shinobi, but he was a one-trick pony that relied upon his earth grudge fear for his strength. Its ability to steal hearts to add to his number of elemental affinities was also extremely useful for him. You, brat! Kakuzu roared angrily as the black tendrils that made up his earth grudge fear began to spill out of his body in seemingly endless waves, prompting me to leap back as they tried to crush me underneath their weight. I will gouge out your heart and parade your body around. I smirked at him in response as I formed a single seal. So you say, I chuckled as I briefly sheathed my kodachi to grasp the javelin of fire I formed next to me. Fire release, flame sunray. Fire release, flame sunray. My voice echoed 7 times as I threw the first one while normally taking several seals to form. Through my training I was able to cut down the needed seals to a single one in exchange for the power of the jutsu when formed with all the seals. But that hardly mattered when I could recreate it several times in the space of a second. Fire exploded around Kakuzu as my jutsu slammed into his monstrous form without mercy, but I didn't let up as I began to properly form hand seals. Water release, explosive bite of the water dragon. Water release, explosive bite of the water dragon. I managed to spot Kakuzu in the midst of the raging fire as moved to escape only for 7 masses of dragon-shaped water to slam into him, forcing him into the ground as said ground, dried from the intense heat, began to buckle. But I wasn't finished. Earth release, earth dragon bullet. Earth release, earth dragon bullet. A technique that had been taught to me by Sarutobi-sama himself that I've come to enjoy as several dragon-shaped heads rose from the freshly made mud to begin bombarding Kakuzu's position with bullets of mud. While not sounding dangerous, the mud was being hurled at hundreds of kilometers per hour, it didn't matter how soft something was at that point, it would be able to kill. But, Kakuzu certainly did prove himself worthy of a S-rank threat rating as he managed to get up from my attack, the black tendrils that made up his body hanging limply around him as he struggled to regain his feet. Do you understand your place now, Kakuzu? I questioned as I stood at the lip of the crater my 3 jutsus made. It must have been quite the sight, standing there, completely untouched as I stood over an enemy that Naruto could only beat after creating the wind release, Raisin Shuriken. Kakuzu gritted his teeth as he glared up at me. Don't get cocky you brat, he shouted as he tried to charge me. A chuckle escaped my lips as I raised a hand. In respect for your strength, allow me to show you just how wide the gap is between us, I announced coldly. I do hope you don't mind if I use an experimental jutsu, do you? It's something I've been working on since my team up with Kokuo. I could see his eyes widen as black and white chakra began to gather in the palm of my hand. Yin-yang release, precipice of heaven and hell, I announced as the ball of chakra launched from the palm of my hand and drove into Kakuzu's body as he flew away shortly before the ball exploded in a violent flash of light with a shockwave that knocked over a few trees. Goodbye, Kakuzu, you shall not be missed. Letting out a sigh, I allowed my eternal Manjikyu Sharingan to fade before turning away from the battle site and followed the path that Kakashi took the genin down. "Nei-san." Naruto and Sasuke called out after a few minutes of walking as the two slammed into me in a tight hug. "Are you alright?" Naruto questioned nervously as he looked up at me in concern. I smiled down at my little brother warmly. Of course, I assured the two of them warmly. Not even a scratch on me, see? The two breathed out relieved sighs as they looked me over, getting a chuckle of amusement from me as I allowed them to do so. "Kazuku?" Kakashi questioned, eyeing the way I came carefully. "Dead," I assured with a calm certainty. "I wanted to check on you all first before collecting the body. Any injuries?" "Nothing that Sakura didn't already take care of," Kakashi assured me, relaxing a bit at my certainty. "Are you sure you're alright?" There were a lot of jutsu flying around from what we could see. I chuckled a bit in response. "Just fine, I wouldn't be a very good kunoichi if I got hit by my own jutsus after all," I informed him with a grin, getting surprised looks from all of them. "I think, Sasuke-kun, it's time you learned a bit more about the Sharingan." Sasuke blinked in surprise as he looked up at me. "What do you mean?" he asked in confusion. "Didn't you already teach me about it when I awakened it?" I smiled at him patiently before gesturing to a nearby fallen tree, most likely from my final attack, before taking a seat myself. This was going to be a bit awkward, as I'd have to mention Itachi. "I taught you about the differences in the abilities of the Sharingan at 1 tomo to 3 tomo, true, but I failed to mention the other abilities we Uchiha can gain. Mostly because of your brother." As always, mention of his previously idolized brother made Sasuke stiffen up like a statue. "Not in that way," I hastily assured him. "You see, well, it doesn't show up in all members of our clan. Usually, just 5 or 6 people per generation have a chance at awakening it. Itachi and I are 2 of them for this generation. Awakening this power requires sorrow, utter heartbreak and sorrow from losing someone close you or believing you have anyway. That is how the Mangekyo Sharingan is awakened in us." "Mangekyo Sharingan?" Sasuke whispered. Naruto and Sakura looked interested as well. "That's right. Every person develops a unique pattern in their eyes and they weep tears of blood when they first activate it," I explained. "Mine was a 5-petaled flower, for example. After awakening, unique ninjutsu are awoken as well. Powerful, unique jutsu that no regular Sharingan can copy." I pointed at my right eye. "Inside my right eye, I possess a jutsu called Kamae Naneo. It allows me to repeat any ninjutsu I have used up to 7 times. Pointing to my left eye. "While inside my left eye, the jutsu, Amano Kahashi, dwells. Using it lets me alter the trajectory of any jutsu within my line of sight." That's incredible." Sakura breathed. "The chakra cost is steep and the strain on the user's body is tough, but there is one further price we must pay to use these eyes," I said softly. "With each use, the jutsu takes some of our eyesight, until we cannot see without having our Sharingan active and, eventually, we lose the light in our eyes permanently." Horrified gasps emerged from the 3 genin. I nodded. When Itachi betrayed the clan, he possessed the Mangekyo as well. He had what is commonly known as the 2 ultimate physical attack and genjutsu attack jutsu available to those who bear the Manjikyu, Amaterasu, the black fire that can burn even other flames to ash and cannot be extinguished until 3 days have passed, and Tsukuyomi, a supposedly unbreakable genjutsu that distorts time so that 72 hours pass from the target's perception, when only seconds pass to the rest of us. Fortunately, he was very unskilled in their use and I was easily able to overwhelm him. I smirked. He ran with his tail tucked between his legs. Doing so, took almost all of my eyesight though. "But, then how?" Naruto asked in confusion and concern. "What I am about to say is a secret of the Uchiha clan. Do not tell anyone," I warned them. Seeing their nods, I continued. 100 years ago, Madara was in the same position I was, almost blind from overuse of the Manjikyu. He discovered there was one single way to regain his sight and even increase his power. He stole the eyes belonging to his brother. For that is the only way to regain the full use of your eyes, transplant the eyes of a blood relative, a close one, into your own. Swapping will not work, the donor must remain blind. How could he? Sasuke said, appalled at his ancestor. It was one of two things that Madara had to do in order to match Hashirama Senju. I answered. The other was use his Sharingan to cast a powerful genjutsu on the Nine Tails, making the most powerful of the Bijou a slave to his will. Naruto looked shaken at that. But Sakura had a look of realization at my words. Sensei, you can see perfectly fine, does that mean your brother? Sakaki and I gave me his eyes as he lay dying on the ground. I answered forcefully, the image making my words harsh. I forced myself back under control. Unlike Madara, I did not want to have to do it, but there was no option, I had to take his eyes and did so with his urging and blessing. Letting the silence hold for a minute, I went on. When a Sharingan is swapped in such a way, the Manjikyu patterns of the two merge and mutate slightly, as you can see. I activated my EMS. The shuriken that you see was the pattern of my brother's Manjikyu. In this way, he is with me always. The advantage to doing this, aside from the return of my sight, was that never again will the Manjikyu take my vision as a cost to its use. That is why we call my eyes the Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan. Letting my EMS fade again, I sighed. Both the EMS and the regular Manjikyu twist the user's mind, giving them a god complex unless they are disciplined enough to resist it. It isn't easy, even for one as determined as myself. That's why there is a bounty on my head and a bounty separately for my eyes. If someone, like Orochimaru, were to get their hands on them, it would be just as bad as if Madara were still alive. Oh, the irony. I could feel the eyes of the genin on me as my thoughts wandered, allowing them the time to process my explanation. Is that why you're so strong? Naruto-kun asked in confusion. And, could you do the same thing as Madara with the Kyuubi? I let out a small sigh as I slumped a bit. They are a powerful tool, yes, but I try not to rely on my Manjikyu, I admitted with a bit of a smile. As for the Kyuubi, I don't think I even want to have that kind of power. Why? Sakura-chan questioned in confusion. It's such a powerful ability. It's a monstrous ability. I cut her off. Taking away the free will of a living, sentient being is never something I have ever wanted to do, nor shall I. Imagine it happening to you, you'd be a prisoner in your own mind, unable to do anything while someone else moved you around like a puppet, even if that action was assassinating Sasuke-kun or Naruto-kun. The pinkette blanched. Oh Cammy, I think I'm going to be sick. I felt a bit bad as she dry heaved. She cared for both of her teammates in this timeline, not just Sasuke-kun, and for far better reasons. The thought of harming them and being helpless to stop it, yeah, I've been the same at her age. And that SWHY I refuse to even attempt something like that, I finished solemnly. Just because you possess power, does not mean you should use it. With great power, come great responsibility, and I am responsible to never allow that cursed power to roam free again. Corny, yes, but it worked well if the mildly odd expressions that the three are giving me are any indication. Spider-Man for the win. So, if I ended up getting the Manjikyu, would Itachi try to come after me? Sasuke-kun questioned nervously. Possibly, I sighed, and I honestly didn't know what Itachi would do at this point. But, if he does, never forget, you are not alone. Sasuke-kun blinked as he was jostled slightly by Naruto-kun who grinned at him while Sakura-chan smiled, getting a slight chuckle from the black-haired boy. And that was the crux of my change, Sasuke-kun didn't stand alone, not by design or by choice. He willingly stood alongside Naruto-kun and Sakura-chan as their friend. I couldn't stop the smile on my face as I watched them speak to each other without actually saying anything, feeling fully at ease with the future of these three at the very least. Alright you three, we still have a mission to complete, Kakashi infomed with a slight chuckle, getting the attention of the three. And Yuriko-san has to recover the body and report into Hokage-sama. The three genin grumbled a bit but stood up all the same to follow their sensei to complete their mission. See you back at Konoha, Ne-san. Naruto called out, waving to me as they moved off. You will. I assured him with a wave of my own before allowing my hand to drop to my side as they vanished, my smile melting into a mask of professionalism as I turned and began looking for Kakuzu's body. I did eventually find it in the center of a new crater from my final attack, the sides of the crater surprising me at how perfectly smooth they were from the explosion that created it. I didn't drop my guard as I approached the body and used my foot to roll it over onto its back, my eyebrow raising slightly as he gasped slightly for air. That is surprising, I murmured, looking down at the barely living Kakazu. How he rasped out in agony. You're too old and obsolete, I told him simply, drawing out my kodachi and checking the edge of the blade. Stay on the other side, where it is safe, because I am here. I went down to one knee and placed my sword at his neck and dropped my voice to a bare whisper. And should you see Madara Uchiha, tell him that his Moon Eye plan will fail, I said, to his obvious confusion. I will never allow this world to be lost in a dream. Before he could even respond, I removed his head and blasted the rest of his body with a high-level fire jutsu, just to ensure he was dead. Sealing his head into a scroll, I took one last look at the smoldering ashes of his remains before turning away and began to make my way home. You have killed Kakuzu the Undying. You gained 50,000 EXP, 4,500,000 Ryo. You looted the Earth Release, Earth Spear, Jutsu Scroll from the body. You have gained a level. End chapter. Yuriko stats: name, Yuriko level, 80 EXP, 19/047/75/000 age, 20 gender, female title, Uchiha clan head, plus 50% to all reputation gains, command of the Uchiha clan, secondary title, equal to the clan killer, plus 50% to all stats, plus 200 HP and CP per level. Reputation with Konohagakure and Uchiha clan is set to Exalted. Stats, current HP, 12,000 CP, 38,500 STR, 100, 175, INT, 140, 210, DX, 160, 280, VIT, 100, 175, WS, 135, 202, LUK, 41, 61, Rio, 39,115,254 stat points, 10 new jutsu. Yin-Yang release, Precipice of Heaven and Hell, Level 1, 0.00%, a unique jutsu created by Yuriko Uchiha based upon her experience with fighting alongside Kokuo when he used the Bijudama. The technique, while similar to the technique, holds a lot less power than the Bijudama and can only be used against a single target unless they are standing close together. If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.